So this Saturday, June 18th, 2022, something special is going to happen in American soccer history, in American traditional football history. Something special is going to happen in USL championship history. Speaking of history, history is going to be made as Detroit City FC hosts the El Paso Locomotive on ESPN. Now, these two teams, their games are usually broadcasted on ESPN Plus. And this match will be on ESPN Plus, but it'll also be on the cable network ESPN, ESPN's main cable network, ESPN, not ESPN2, not ESPN Deportes, not ESPN3, but ESPN. And this is special. The reason why this is special is because the USL in particular, will be able to showcase how America can live and thrive and grow and rebrand itself through small business. The USL will be able to use this match to show America that they are leading the charge in restoring communities. Detroit is a special city. One of the reasons why Detroit is a special city, because the history of Detroit shows what happens when too many big businesses are in charge. The history of Detroit shows what happens when there are too many millionaires that have a voice and dictates the decisions of people's lives. A lot of people up to this day blame former mayor Kwame Kilpatrick. They saying Kilpatrick is the reason why Detroit is a mess. They said Kilpatrick is the one that destroyed Detroit. If you are a person that believes that, if you're a person that believes that lie, you need to stay away from the television. You need to read more books, and you need to do research for yourself. If you believe that Kilpatrick is the reason why Detroit's in the situation that is in, you have been living under a rock for the past 50 years. You have not been doing your own individual research to educate yourself. And you are the one that is being led by liars and deceivers. Kilpatrick did not destroy Detroit. Kilpatrick inherited the mess that was already created by big businesses before he was even born. I repeat, Kilpatrick inherited the mess that was already established. It was already created, not before he became mayor. I'm talking about this stuff was already established. The corruption was already established before he was born. You want to look to somebody? You want to look who you want to know who are the real people that destroyed Detroit? The real people who caused Detroit to be in the mess that is in, and now it's small businesses and ordinary people who don't have that much resources. They are the ones that's left to clean up the mess that the rich people left behind. How about you ask the NFL? They know who did it. They know who's responsible for the mess that Detroit's in. Ask the NFL. Ask the NBA. Ask Major League Baseball. The three of them know. They definitely know. And the same group of people, the same family that is an ally of the NFL, the same family that has ownership stake in the NFL, they wanted to infiltrate the MLS. They wanted to infiltrate the soccer ecosystem in America. They wanted to come and disrupt the growth of soccer in Detroit by creating a team in the MLS. And Don Garber almost fell for it. The reason why he didn't fall for it was because the Ford family did not want to build a soccer specific stadium in Detroit. Yes, the Ford family, which owns an NFL team. Dan Gilbert, which owns an NBA team. Tom Gores owns the NBA team. The three of those forces, rich, wealthy, big business people, the same big business people, the same type of big business people that killed the city of Detroit to begin with, those same type of big business people wanted to start a professional soccer team in Detroit. And the media members in the city of Detroit supported it too, by the way. They wanted to start a soccer team in Detroit. But Don Garber said no, because they didn't want to build a soccer specific stadium. So all it took was for these big business people to agree to build a soccer specific stadium in Detroit, and you will have Detroit as an MLS team instead of Cincinnati. The Ford family, Dan Gilbert and Tom Gore's reluctance to build a soccer specific stadium in Detroit comes as a blessing in disguise. Because if they had their way in creating a MLS team and their games were going to be played at Ford Field, it was going to be played at the Dome, the same stadium that the Lions play. If they would have had their way, there would not be a Detroit City FC. Detroit City FC is the complete opposite of the Ford family. Detroit City FC is the complete opposite from Dan Gilbert and Tom Gores. Detroit City FC is the exact opposite of Tom Monahan. Now you may be wondering, what does Tom Monahan have to do with this? Tom Monahan was a founder. He's a founder of Domino's Pizza. But also, at the time, Tom Monahan, a former Detroit Tigers owner, who many people in the city blames, points to him as the reason why they had to pay to construct a new baseball stadium in the city. But Tom Monahan, Dan Gilbert, Tom Gores, I don't believe that they're as bad as the Ford family. If you're a Detroit City FC fan, you really, really better be thankful. As a matter of fact, not only Detroit City FC fans, all soccer purists, soccer fans, soccer spectators, soccer viewers, all of us got to be thankful that the MLS rejected the Ford family's plan to start a soccer team in Detroit. You know, there was a book that I read by Neil DeMause, and the name of the book is Field of Schemes. If you haven't read this, I encourage you to get this book on Amazon Kindle. If you have, you can download the Kindle app on your cell phone, or if you got a tablet, it's better to read on a tablet because it's much bigger on a tablet. But if you got a cell phone, you can download it on your cell phone. But it's called Field of Schemes by Neil DeMause. And this book basically talks about how sports owners, it exposes the business deals and the lobbying that they do behind the scenes in order to get taxpayers to pay for their new stadiums. And it also reveals how new stadiums causes people to lose their homes, how new stadiums destroy communities, how new stadiums causes people to become homeless. And it also reveals how politicians are in cahoots with these sports owners, because the politicians, they get money. You know, they get a financial benefit from these new stadiums. And the people that hurt the most are the taxpayers and the people that live near the locations of these new stadiums. Anyhow, Neil deMause, he highlighted the situation in Detroit, where it was a year where the Tigers wanted a new stadium. The MLB, the Detroit Tigers wanted a new stadium, and it was a huge political uproar in Detroit. I mean, the people were tired. Look, people in Detroit have really suffered because of big business. Big business have really destroyed that city. So for a sports team to want a new stadium, they knew that they were going to suffer the most. They knew they were going to have to pay for it and not benefit from it. Taxpayers pay a huge chunk of the bill when it comes to building a new stadium, and then they can't even attend the games because the prices are so high to attend the games. The tickets are so high. Now, throughout this book, Field and Schemes, and Neil deMause's long research, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind, before he wrote this book, it probably took many months and many years for him to write this book. But anyways, one of the most interesting conversations that he had in his research of this book was with a Detroit native. And his name was Frank Rashid. He's a Detroit English professor. And he grew up as a Tigers fan, a Detroit Tigers fan. And like in the late 1980s, he was in charge of the Detroit Tiger fan club, the Detroit Tiger Stadium fan club. So I'm going to read one of his quotes, Frank Rashid. I'm not sure if he's still the president of the Detroit Tiger Stadium fan club, but Frank Rashid, this is what he stated. Now listen, this is from Frank Rashid in the book Field of Schemes. He said, "We say in Detroit that we have a lousy class of rich people. They dumped on the city. They abused it. They exploited it. They controlled it. And then they left it. Until the 1920s, Detroit's economy boasted a variety of small manufacturing industries. The rise of the auto industry put an end to that." So look at that. I'm going to stop right there. So Rashid said, before the rise of the big auto industry, the city was thriving off of small businesses. I repeat, before the rise of the auto industry, the city of Detroit was thriving off of small manufacturing industries. Small businesses is what kept that city together. Big businesses is what divided that city. Small business, USL championship, is what's bringing the city back together. A big business, such as the MLS and the Ford family building a soccer-specific stadium in that city, the city's already on life support. That would have just killed the city right there. Well, let me continue to read. The rise of the auto industry put an end to that. Until the 1920s, Detroit's economy boasted a variety of small manufacturing industries. The rise of the auto industry put an end to that, says Rashid. by creating an economy of booms and busts and continuous plant closings and reopenings and employing a largely Southern-born labor force that erupted in racial antagonism each time the industry took a downturn. The Ford Motor Company in particular hopped from Detroit to suburbs. The Ford Motor Company in particular hopped from Detroit to suburban Highland Park to neighboring River Rouge, leaving crumbling factories and displaced lives in its wake. Let me read that sentence again. The Ford Motor Company, yes, the Ford family that owns the NFL team, the Ford Motor Company in particular hopped from Detroit to suburban Highland Park to neighboring River Rouge, leaving crumbling factories and displaced lives in its wake. Now I'm going to stop right there. Rashid, he mentioned race in this. Racial antagonism. Because many times when big businesses do something that hurts the economy, the first thing that we as a people do, we usually point to race. The black people say it's the white person's fault. And then the white person say, it's not our fault. What are you talking about? It's your fault. You're not working hard enough. You're lazy. You're always fighting and killing each other. And that bickering between whites and blacks, it brings confusion to the people, to all of us. It brings confusion to all of us. And then because the whites and blacks are constantly bickering with each other, we forget who the real issue is. And the real issue is big business. And that's what's been going on in Detroit for so long. The rich people do a lot of demonic, evil things. And then the whites and the blacks, they start pointing fingers at each other, which brings confusion. It brings destruction. It causes crime to increase. It causes murder and homicide to increase, all because of confusion. Let me read that sentence one more time. Hold on. Let me read the last two sentences one more time. The rise of the auto industry put an end to that, says Rashid, by creating an economy of booms and busts and continuous plant closings and reopenings and employing a largely Southern-born labor force that erupted in racial antagonism each time the industry took a downturn. The Ford Motor Company in particular hopped from Detroit to suburban Highland Park to neighboring River Rouge, leaving crumbling factories and displaced lives in its wake. Each time, according to Rashid, Henry Ford built up a labor force, a tax base, and then abandoned it, and then foisted off the social costs of his erratic business, his layoffs, and all of that on the cities. It's a fascinating story of abuse of the public coffers. In the 1980s, General Motors, another auto giant that had fled to the suburbs, agreed to return to downtown Detroit in exchange for the city's agreement to demolish Pole Town, a thriving, if poor, neighborhood of tens of thousands to make way for a sprawling auto plant. Now there is talk that GM regards Pole Town plant as obsolete and looking to move out of town again. Before I get to General Motors, let me finish up on the Ford family. So the Ford family, they had 3 factories in the Detroit area. 3. Rashid said they hopped from Detroit to Highland Park to neighboring Rouge. Are they still in River Rouge? I don't know. But the book says they hopped from Detroit and they hopped from Highland Park, causing people to lose jobs, causing people to lose their homes. A man loses his job, he loses his home. What does he do? He gets frustrated. When a man gets frustrated, what he do? He turns to drugs. When a man turns to drugs, what happened to him? He starts getting crazy. When he becomes crazy, what he do? He robs people, kill people. It's frustration. All because of the actions of the Ford family. And this is the same Ford family that said they wanted to start a professional soccer team in Detroit. We got to be counting our blessings that such didn't happen. Now, this other big business, General Motors. Now, Poletown, for those who don't know, Poletown is a Polish immigrants. Let me tell you about Poletown. Remember a few moments ago, I talked about how the whites and the blacks, they're pointing fingers at each other? Because the actions of the rich don't only affect black people. This is the media is lying to you. The media is lying to you. That's why that rapper Kenny Mayne says stay off the television. Because they're lying to you. It's not only black people that's affected by the actions of the rich. Detroit's a good example. Poletown, the history of Poletown, it was inhabited by Polish immigrants. Poland is a country like I believe it's in Eastern Europe. I just know it's in Europe. I don't know if it's Central Europe or Eastern Europe, but Poland is in Europe. It's a European country. And a lot of Polish immigrants migrated to Detroit like somewhere between the 1950s and the 1970s, somewhere around there. A lot of Polish, they started migrating they started migrating to Detroit from Poland. General Motors, the same way that the Ford family abandoned American residents in Detroit was the same way General Motors abandoned white Polish Americans in Detroit. The reason why I use these two businesses as an example is because Detroit City FC and the USL is different. They represent something different. And I call Detroit City FC the Green Bay Packers of American soccer. They're not only the Green Bay Packers of the USL, they're also the Green Bay Packers of the MLS, American soccer in general. Why? It's because they are allowing the community to lead. They're not making decisions without talking to the community. They are getting the community involved in growing the program. The business. The community is involved. Look at the stadium they play at. Keyword Stadium. That stadium was renovated by basically donations from everyday people. They told the citizens of Detroit, they said, we're not going to force you to build our stadium like the Ford family wanted to do with their MLS stadium. No, Detroit City FC said, they said, if you are willing, help us renovate this high school football stadium to turn it into something better that will not only benefit us, but it will also benefit you and the entire city of Detroit. This is one of the reasons why I wanted Detroit City FC to make it to the US Open Cup final, so we can continue to see the good works that's going on. But it is what it is. They lost, unfortunately. But anyhow, when you watch this match this Saturday, I just want you to know that this is bigger than football. This is bigger than soccer. This is much bigger than soccer. Look at the logo. Look at the logo. You have a man who is holding the sun and the city in one hand, and in the other hand, it's a woman and a baby, a child. Like, whoever is responsible of this art, like ESPN, can you do us a favor if possible? Whoever's responsible for this art, can we please get an interview at halftime? Like at halftime, like, can you give us an interview? Because I want to know, like, what was the thought process in creating this logo? Like, what was the vision? What was the artist's vision? What was the artist's purpose? What kind of message that the artist is sending to the viewer through this artwork? It looks like some kind of an ancient Greek god that's just bringing life and restoring the city, like rebirth. I'm thinking the woman and the child represents new birth, new life. And then the sun shining on the city represents a new day. And then the man just represents power. The man represents strength. The man represents leadership. And the man and the woman and the child and the city as a whole are all working together to live a good, decent life. That's what I think about when I see this piece of artwork. And to be honest with you, based on what I summed up from this artwork, that's what it looks like Detroit City FC really represents. Detroit City Football Club must be protected at all costs. And if Detroit City ever thinks about moving up to the MLS, it must be led by the community and not corporations.
It's easy to get a gun than it is a job. He just had another son, so now here's the plot. He walked up out the crib, it's like 12 o'clock. His baby mama all up in his ear, now he going to rob. That chopper with him longer than the city block. He make you put them hands up like it's 12 o'clock. That chopper get to going, you gon' wish it stopped like who gon' call the cops? Everybody heads down, the whole city broke. They filing bankrupt, the whole city owes. Vacant buildings everywhere, where did the city go? Kwame Kilpatrick left him